Welcome everyone to episode 49 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts. Today I talked with Nadav Cohen, also known as aMess, who is a producer and instrumentalist working out of Melbourne, Australia. In this episode, we talk about how you can remove the pressure that you put on yourselves in a session, his favorite ways to collaborate, and how giving without expectation can lead to future prospects. For all that and heaps more, stay tuned. If you could do us a favor and share this podcast with someone you know, someone that you think might get something out of this. We want to spread the word of it and get it out to as many people as possible, and you can help by sharing it. Make sure you're following or subscribed on the podcast platform that you're checking this out on so you can stay up to date with any future episodes. And if you have any suggestions or questions, you can reach out to my email. It is podcast.whatsthatsound@gmail.com. If you want to know anything more about Nadav or myself, you can check out the show notes for links. But without any further ado, let's get into it. This episode of What's That Sound podcast. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. Welcome everyone. Stu Watts here. I'm here with Nadav Cohen, otherwise known as aMess.
Yeah,
is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, you got it.
I got it right? Yeah, beautiful. Yes, I should have asked before.
No, that's fine. I've had aMess. I've had everything before.
aMess,
yeah,
aMess.
Yeah.
Great stuff, man. Well, yeah, thanks for coming through and all good. And tell us a bit about yourself for people that don't know who you are, what you do in the industry.
Yeah, it's always fun to summarize yourself in a little elevator pitch, but I'll try my best. Yeah. I'm pretty much a music producer and an instrumentalist. Play piano, guitar, play oud, which is like a Middle Eastern instrument, bass. You've caught me at a really interesting time to bring me in to talk about myself, because for the past 4 or 5 years, I've done solely instrumental music.
Yeah.
I've done music for films, for libraries, I've done all my lo-fi beats and chill beat stuff, which has been amazing. And only this year I've decided to start pivoting into artist work, to start working more with artists. And you've caught me at a really interesting kind of, transition period in my life. So to summarize, I guess that would kind of be it in terms of what I do. Yeah.
Unreal. Well, we will get into that, but I want to start off and kind of let, people know about where music came into your life, how it started, kind of what you were into when you were a kid and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. I think for as long as I can remember, my dad, and still to this day, is always playing music around the house. Like he's just got his speaker on from his computer, like his Logitech speakers, just bumping music. And it was just a variety of stuff, a lot of electronic music, a lot of ambient music. And the stuff that he really introduced me to, the first band was Black Sabbath. And I'm like a little 8-year-old kid, Black Sabbath, I want to learn guitar, I want to do this. And Guitar Hero was a huge soundtrack to my early teens and all that. So that's
it's the first time Guitar Hero has been mentioned on the podcast.
I'm sure it's part of
a lot of people's childhoods.
Absolutely, man. Guitar Hero was it. World Tour and Guitar Hero 3. Yeah, all that stuff was great. So that's where I started, was playing guitar. It was all the 70s, 60s, 80s rock. All that stuff was huge for me. I was a huge Floyd fan. Yeah. A lot of prog rock, that kind of thing. From there, it went into just deathcore, death metal,
really?
all that stuff. I played in a few deathcore bands as well.
Unreal.
A little local claim to fame. Do you know Gloom in the Corner?
Yeah.
Yes. So I played in a band with Mikey for a very short period of time before he did Gloom in the Corner.
I don't know the band, but I know of them. Yeah.
So that's my little local claim to fame with that, which was cool. And then I did a full 180 and went into ambient music. And so from there, it was a lot of synth stuff, a lot of sound design, post-rock, that kind of thing. Took that, and then everyone kept telling me, man, this belongs in films. And I was like, right, well, I guess I'm doing film music then. And so I went into scoring short films and indie projects, and then from there discovered lo-fi, discovered chill beats, realized that I had no idea how to produce drums, and that was the next challenge for me, and that's what I've been doing since. And now the next challenge for me is producing for artists, working with artists, and making actual songs and not just beats. So
tell us about like what do you kind of picture yourself doing with artists?
I think so. I've produced for artists in the past 3 years. I kind of started working more with artists and that kind of thing, but it hasn't been my main focus. And I think this year I decided, okay, I really want to work more with artists. And that just came from a desire to work more with people, because I also organize a lot of stuff overseas, because a lot of the guys from the label that I work with are based in Europe. And so if I want to work with people in person, which is what I really love, I have to organize it in Europe. And so I organize a lot of meetups and writing camps and that kind of thing, which is really like the heart and soul of what I've been doing. I really love it, man. It's just the best thing. And I realized that if I want to start building that here, then a really good way to do that is to work with artists and work with people, because I need that. You know, we were just talking about it. Like I need that energy in the studio. I need to vibe with other people. I want to bounce ideas off people and just get new inspiration, new ideas from other people. It's just the best way for me to work. Yeah. So for me, I really picture myself as, you know, just doing a bit of everything. I think kind of like what we all do is just, you know, a bit of a songwriter, a bit of a producer, mixing the whole thing, you know. Absolutely. Yeah, and I've already been doing that for a few years, but now it's really just going to, you know, now it's the full focus. Now it's really grinding that.
Yeah, unreal. I mean, there's so much to unpack, but I guess I do want to just take it back to kind of when you were learning about, you know, production and that sort of thing. Because obviously, it's a whole world, and you know, you said you were playing music, you were playing in bands, but then you started to dive into the ambient. What was that switch like? Why did you go, I'm going to go to that lane from deathcore, you know?
I don't know, man. I think it was just what I was listening to at the time, and I was listening to a band called Explosions in the Sky. Yeah, great band, good. Right? And I was sitting there with, you know, Logic open on my, you know, Mac, and I just went, I'm just going to try and make some music like them. And it was the first time I'd recorded something where I was like, this is actually listenable. Like, this isn't garbage. Like, this actually sounds good. I've somehow just got the right guitar tone and the right bass tone and the drums, and it just kind of glued into place. And I was like, okay, cool. So I can actually do this. Like, I don't need to be some professional in a big studio or anything. I can do this from my bedroom. And I just went from there.
Yeah, it's a cool epiphany to have, isn't it?
It was great. It was really, really cool that I just went, oh, cool. And I made that little EP in one weekend and put it out, and, you know, got like 200 downloads on Bandcamp, which was crazy because
that's sick.
It was the first thing I ever made. And it was really, really cool.
And what were you kind of like, what were the things that stood out to you as being like, all right, you know, this doesn't sound bad, or like what technically were you trying to achieve?
There was nothing technical. It was just, it sounded like what I had in my head, but B, it sounded like the music that I was listening to, which is something I'd never achieved before then. It was always just missing the mark, but it was the first time that I went, this is really, really close. Like, this is actually what I want it to sound like. And that was like, wow, okay, I can actually do that. And from there, just down the rabbit hole, man. Like, just down the rabbit hole of making different genres of music, you know, trying to emulate Hans Zimmer and trying to emulate a bunch of other bands and musicians and stuff. And
And so obviously when you're trying to emulate stuff and you're trying to, I guess you're unpacking genres and you're kind of going, there's a lot of analysis. It's like, oh, you know, what are they doing here? I guess lo-fi and beats and things like that, they're very specific genres. You know, they have as soon as you hear it, it's like it fits into that lane.
Absolutely.
One, what are you trying to achieve and what are you listening for in that lane, as well as two, how do you kind of give it your own flavor?
Great question. I think when I first started doing the lo-fi stuff, as I said, I was doing kind of ambient music, and so I had no idea how to produce drums, and that was a really steep learning curve. Just actually getting drums to sound good. What's a kick supposed to sound like? What makes a good snare? Which is still a question I'll have till I die. But anyway, why is the snare good?
But the key is there's no answer.
There is no answer. It's just whatever you want, right? You know what are good drums in a track? And I reckon that took me about a year to actually, I kind of know what's going on. I think for me, the chill beats and the lo-fi stuff is kind of split up into three kind of sections. One of them is the jazzy upbeat kind of, you know, 90 BPM, really groovy stuff. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got the sleepy stuff, really slow, like 55 BPM, just... you know, just sleep stuff. It is, you know, sleep lo-fi. That's what it's called. And then somewhere in between, you've got kind of a mix of the two, but leaning more towards the sleep stuff. When I first started, it was that kind of mixture of the two. It was just very chill, but not putting you to sleep yet. And it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. The drums just have a certain sound where it's not lo-fi in the sense that it's so far removed from lo-fi now. It's really high polished stuff, but it's still got the certain groove and the certain elements. And I think it's just, listening to stuff and emulating it, listening to the drums. Okay, where's the kick and the snare kind of sitting exactly? Where are the pockets? You know, what are the kind of tones they're hitting? Is the snare beefy or is it kind of like, you know, snappy and quick? Like, you know, listening to all that kind of stuff. And just getting a feel for it. And then I think from the instrumental side as well, listening to, okay, you know, there's a lot of, you know, 1/4s, you know, -6, that kind of stuff going in there. there's just certain keys. It's really hard to describe without actually making the music, but there's just certain things that after a while of listening to it, you just go, that's what it should sound like. That's not really hitting the mark. That's what it, just going through and doing that. Yeah. I think the jazzy stuff is a bit harder.
I've noticed your stuff is a lot guitar focused.
Yeah.
Obviously it sits into that genre. There's a lot of guitar in lo-fi, but not necessarily. And at the same time, but I love that guitar is like at the forefront, as well as the drums, as well as the chord progressions and things like that. Is that intentional? Or is it just something that you like to do? Is it just like, I like to play guitar?
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of the music that people listen that I've made that people listen to has guitar at the forefront of that. And the past year I've actually just been piano only. Like guitar has been an additional element. The foundation of it has been piano. So I think, what I used to create was definitely guitar focused because it was just where I was most comfortable. As I said, I grew up listening to prog rock and all that stuff. And so I was playing a lot of guitar. And then, over the years, it's just morphed into being more jazz piano focused. And that's just where I'm more comfortable now. So if I'm starting a track now, it's piano first.
Great.
It wasn't really an intentional decision. It was just, this is where I'm comfortable. This is where I want to sit. And I'm going to do what I know best. I never wanted to do something that I'm not good at or I'm not incredible at. Like I want to do what I'm really good at and I can leave, the other stuff to the people who are good at what they do. For example, I had an opportunity to send music to a Netflix production, which was really cool. And they wanted a modern cover of a 70s song.
Right.
So we took Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover and made it into like this Dua Lipa kind of track.
Ooh.
And
sounds fun.
I smashed the production of it. Like it sounds great. It's one of my favorite mixes I've done. But I couldn't get the vocal mix. And I just called in my friend who knows how to do vocal mixes. And I said, man, you do this because you're good at this. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to, you know what I mean? That's his thing. And I really wanted him to do that. And it sounded great. So my focus is always on what I'm really good at. And, at the time it was guitar and now it's more piano stuff.
Yeah. And so I guess how do you come to that realization, I guess? Because that's one of the big challenges of young artists. In myself when I was younger was like you're trying to do everything, you're trying to do this and you're not really nailing stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess the awareness is a big thing. So how do you come to that awareness? How do you go, I know that this is what I'm good at,
I think it's just, for me, it was really important to let go of the ego and just really analyze, is this sounding, like, is this actually good? Just objectively, is this good? And a lot of the time with some of the stuff I was doing, no, this is garbage. Like no one wants to listen to this, right? And just being really honest with myself about that. But then when I'm doing something good, being like, that's it. Like I'm really, really good at that and I understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's just the self-awareness and just keeping yourself in check of what's good and what's... on both ways, hyping yourself up when you need to and also just humbling yourself when you're like, okay, this isn't really your thing. Leave this to someone else. But, focus on the stuff that you're good at.
Yeah, and I think along with that as well is like it takes a bit of time to get into the groove of it, and I think it can take, 3-5 years of you doing something consistently and actually realizing what your strengths are.
Absolutely.
And so along with that is like, how do you get yourself into that groove? How do you find like being creative? How do you go, I'm rocking up to the studio today and I'm going to dive in and make a song? What things are that like, do you do to make sure that you're good for the day? You know what I mean?
That's such a good question. I think to get into the creative process, I wake up in the morning and I need to check with myself, do I feel like working today? And I think it's something really dangerous to do early on because a lot of artists kind of fall into this trap of I'm only going to work when I'm creatively motivated and they end up doing, one session a month and then nothing gets done, right? But it's kind of keeping myself in check and being like, if I go into the studio today, is it going to be somewhat productive? Am I going to get anything done? And for example, yesterday I woke up and I was just like, no. If I go into the studio, it's going to be an absolute disaster because I had a good session on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It was great. I'm not feeling it today, right? But it's being honest with yourself about saying, okay, have you done enough work this week? Have you done enough work in the past few weeks? And going in. If I'm feeling like going in to do a session, whatever happens will just happen. Sometimes it's a great track, sometimes it's whatever, and that's totally fine. Not every track I make needs to be the best thing I've ever made. It just needs to be good.
And I think there's a difference between when you're doing it for yourself and when you're doing it with clients or on a project that is being paid for or anything like that. So there is a separation there, and I think you have to get good at being okay with that, okay with going, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to pick up a guitar, I'm going to jump on the keyboard, I'm going to hit record and just see what happens. And that can be really hard when you're first starting because it can feel like you're not getting anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think especially at the start, it can feel like, oh, this isn't my best work. Like I don't want to send this to the client or whatever. But the reality of it is you get to the point where you've done it so many times that even something that isn't your best work is still incredible. It's still good. And I think that's what's really important. It's recognizing that you just need to get to the point where you're good enough is actually really, really good.
Yeah.
And your best work is, mind blowing. And that's the point you want to be at. And I think, that's what we're all aiming for.
I think you can only ever be where you are at that point in time as well. And so working up to that point, there's no that point. You're just going to continuously keep getting better.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. It's a continuous learning journey. And that's something that's really important for me because I was sitting last year and I kind of struggled with this what's next thing because I had all these streams coming in and I was doing really, really well and making good money. And I'm just like, okay, like it's all working, but what's the next kind of learning stage? Like I kind of spent the past few years wanting to get to this point where I'm a full-time musician and now I'm here and it's kind of like, now what? And I went, well, you can improve on your piano playing. You can improve on your production with artists. You can improve on so many different things. And it was just like, okay, let go of your ego. Yeah, you've completely self-taught. Fuck that. Just go and take lessons, man. Yeah. So now I've been taking piano lessons because that's what I need to do to improve, right? And it's letting go of that, I'm self-taught and I know what I'm doing. It's just, no, I don't know everything and I need to learn more things. And I think as long as you're always in that mode of learning and you don't know everything and you can always learn from other people, I think you're constantly going to get better. Yep. You're going to learn and you're just going to get the fulfillment that you need from your work because, you're looking back on a year and being like, I'm so much better than I was a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And I think that for me, that's the most fulfilling part.
It is. And it is enjoyable to look back and to reflect. Like a lot of people I know don't do it. They don't want to. They think, it's kind of like there's an ego thing there of like, I don't want to listen to my old stuff. It was shit, this and that. But I think there's always something to learn. Absolutely. There's always something to learn from looking back. And there's also that gratitude piece of like, look where I was and look how far I've come and just giving yourself a little boost.
Absolutely.
Like I like chucking my playlist on random and just like a random song coming up that I haven't listened to for 2 years and be like, oh, that's cool. I wouldn't have done that. Huh? I can do that again. Those sorts of things as well.
Absolutely,
yeah. And so, when I want to talk more about your process and what a session looks like, are there differences day to day, or do you kind of start the same way and progress the whole, until you finish the song?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think everyone has a different process and there's absolutely no right way to do that. For me, it depends what I'm working on. If I'm working with an artist, the thing that I hate the most in the studio is pressure. I can't work under pressure. Like I need time, and I think a lot of artists just need time and space to explore. I had an artist in on Tuesday, for example, and he came in and he said, I just haven't written anything good since, February. And I said, dude, let's just go in. Let's just make something. If it sounds like shit, it sounds like shit. If it sounds good, it sounds good. But just make something. Just write about whatever you want. It doesn't have to be good, man. No expectations. And we came in and it was the first time he'd written something, like actually written lyrics since February. And he said, I really like this and the song's coming together. And I was like, great. I'm so happy that I could inspire that. I don't know if the song will be released, but like the fact that we could create something, and for him, the first time he's created something in a few months was great. And I think, that kind of process is just, let's just go in and make something.
Yeah.
With artists, it's just awesome. Yeah.
I think you can have a tendency to put so much pressure on yourself, and it's not even external pressure. It's like you're just forcing yourself to be in this and you're telling yourself these negative things. You're saying, I haven't written anything. That means I'm not going to write anything good today. Or if I go in, what if it sucks? That. There's so much internal negativity that can force you into a corner and result in that bad outcome. But like you said, if you just release that pressure, you just have no expectations and you can go in, you can go, let's just see what happens. Because at the end of the day, usually something good happens.
Yeah, definitely.
It's often, to me, it's more often than not, especially with I'm working with an artist, when you take that pressure off and you go, just see what happens. Just sit here for 10 minutes. I'm going to walk out the door. I'm just going to put it on loop, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you'll come back and they'll be like, oh yeah, I got something.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And it works. I think the process is very different for myself because when I'm with myself, that pressure comes back and it's like, okay, you got to make something good. You got to, make something incredible. But if I'm writing music for a label, if I'm writing music for a library or for a certain client or something, it's a lot easier for me to make music because I've got a direction. I know what they want. There's a deadline or whatever. So I sit in. It actually just helps me so much to have that pressure, the deadline and the direction, which I think some people don't like. They feel maybe a bit restricted, but I like those restrictions. They just kind of help push me into the right place. So that's always fine. I never really have an issue with that. I just go in and do it. It sounds great and go to the next project. When I'm writing music for myself, that's when it's a bit more interesting because I can get in and bash around on the piano for an hour and just not have anything good come out. Or I can go in and within 10 minutes I've got a track. But the process is, very much just sit down and make something that sounds good. That's always been my process. I remember Deadmau5 had a masterclass a few years ago that I watched. And he said, some artists really need to come in and have a story and have this connection with their music. He's like, I just want to make something that sounds good. And I'm like, that's the first artist I've heard say that. And that's exactly it. If I'm building an album, I'll find the story later. But for me, it's always get into the studio, just make something that sounds cool, make something that's interesting to you, whatever that is. And that's always my approach.
And I think generally speaking, the listener can tell when that is the case. It's like if you're inspired or if you're feeling something and you just go with the flow, that translates in a track.
100%.
And you can kind of tell when you can tell when something's forced. You can tell when something's natural and organic and it just happens. That somehow, I don't know how, but it somehow translates to the track.
I don't know. I remember growing up and listening to people talk about the vibe and this, and I'm like, what kind of rubbish are you guys talking about? And then as I got into it more, I was like, no, this is a legit thing. Like there is a vibe and you can tell when the vibe is there. You really, really can. And I can tell when I'm listening to, my friends' music and stuff. This album, you were really inspired. This album, maybe not so much. And they're like, bang on. Because you feel it. You really, really feel it. Yeah.
I love it, man. And I guess I want to unpack, how it came to be that you started, working on things for hire, things like that, because, you can't, it doesn't just happen so that you make music and then all of a sudden you're writing for someone. You know what I mean? So let's unpack that. Like, I don't think I've really touched on that in this podcast much. How did it come to be that you started to work with, Netflix and on those sorts of things,
Yeah, that's a really interesting journey. The first thing that I started doing was, so I went to uni for 1 year in 2018 to study finance and statistics.
Okay.
Then I went, I need to do music full time. I need to try this because, I'm sure everyone has had this, but everyone around them, the family tells them music is not a job. It's not viable. You won't make money. The classic, right?
Yeah.
And I tried it for 2 years and I was putting myself out there to score films and I was doing a lot of indie projects. And it was just, my approach was just to contact directors and reach out to local filmmakers and stuff and start doing that. And I got some work from that and it was good.
Cool.
But from there, I realized that it was just, I just didn't really see the longevity in it. It was just too much work for not enough payment. And I didn't really see the stability in a career with that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had to chat to my friend, Gregory Tan, who's an incredible, he makes music for libraries and stuff. And he's just amazing. Like everything he does is just gold, Midas touch.
Yeah.
And he kind of said, well, have you considered kind of doing library music where, you just make the music that you enjoy, you give it to a library and, they kind of pitch it for you. And I said, I don't even know what that is. And he put me onto library music. And I think that was when I first started actually creating music for other people, is making music for libraries and, making albums of whatever kind of genre they needed at the time. And I think that was the first things that I did was just library music. And I think library music is a great way to start because there's less expectations or pressure than maybe a client bring you on for a project, for example, bring you in to do a remix or to score a specific piece of music. There's less expectations there because they're just going, we just want an album of orchestral music. Okay, great.
Whatever that means to you.
Whatever that is, orchestral music. We need an album of uplifting music. Okay, great. Sure. Is this uplifting? Yeah, great. Also, and so there's less expectation. It's a lot more, you have a lot more freedom to create, which is a great place to start. Eventually, I then moved on to creating a lot of music for Lo-Fi Girl, the label, and I worked with them really closely for the past few years.
Yeah.
That was cutthroat.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That was the complete opposite because there's just so much competition for them.
Yeah.
Classic stories of people working on albums for a few months. They send them 10 tracks and they said, we're not interested. Yeah. And it's brutal. Yeah, it is absolutely brutal, man. It is heartbreaking. And I had friends who made incredible music. They sent them 5-6 albums and nothing. Rejected. And, when you get to that side of things, it's pretty brutal. But I was lucky enough to have worked on 5 albums with them and a few EPs.
Beautiful.
With them. And, they brought me on to do a lot of sync stuff as well. We did an official remix for the Starfield soundtrack last year, which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
We did some music for Lego. We did some music for Renault.
Wow.
Which was really, really cool. And a lot of that stuff is, they just give you a pitch and they say, hey, we need some music for this kind of thing and blah, blah, blah. And they tell you what they want. Do you want to do
much back and forth or is it kind of like yes, no.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
just
much
yes, no.
just yes, no. Just,
Yeah.
you know, with a Lego thing, it was send us 3 tracks, just whatever you want, and we'll pick the one that we like. And that was it. When it was making music for the label specifically for them to release, it was the same thing. It was just, do we like the track? Yes. Do we not like it? No. And that's it. You know, we can give you some feedback, but there's very little wiggle room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when it comes to that, like you've put those tracks out, you're on the libraries and stuff. I want to know a little bit more about the libraries as well. Is it like, again, is it you just upload it to a server and then it's all ready to go, and like a Bandcamp type deal, or what does that look like for the uninitiated like myself?
Yeah, of course. So the way I've worked with some libraries, so there's 2 types of libraries. There's the non-exclusive ones and there's the exclusive ones. So something like Artlist, you would have seen, is a non-exclusive library. They can take music that's signed to other libraries as well, and they'll just have it on their website and people can go in and use it. And then there's exclusive libraries, which I tend to work more with. And the way they work is, they will go, okay, you know, recently they asked me for an orchestral kind of hip hop album. So I'm doing that. And once that gets finished, I sent it to them. They look over it, you know, they'll approve it, reject it, whatever. And they then go and send it out to, you know, there's a company called Beatbox Music in Australia. And they place a lot of music on television. They'll send it out to Beatbox Music, or whatever the equivalent is in Europe or the US. And that's how they'll get their placements.
Yeah, unreal. They act as kind of like an agent in a way.
Pretty much. It's kind of like an agent, and they will go and push that music. And
that's wicked. Hey, thanks so much for listening so far. There is plenty more to come, so don't go anywhere. I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is made completely independently by myself with no sponsors. So if you like what you hear and you would like to show your support, you can send a donation to the PayPal link, paypal.me/whatsthatsound. The link is also in the show notes. Thanks so much for your support, and let's get back to it.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah, sick. And I guess, you know, let's unpack the being a business and, you know, that side of things, because I think what is really important, and that a lot of beginner producers and engineers don't necessarily understand because they haven't been exposed to it, is how much it is a job.
Absolutely.
You know, you've got to come in and you've got to do your hours, and you got to make sure you're ticking all these boxes, that you are self-guided. You have to make sure you've got these checklists, you know, going and stuff like that. So talk us through what that looks like for you.
Before, I was talking about how I will give myself time off when I need to. And I think it's really important to distinguish between giving myself time off after I've worked 5 days straight and just not working at all. I think that's a really, really important distinction, because it's a fine balance that you have to strike, and it's something that's taken me years to work out. Am I doing enough work, or am I not doing enough work? You know, I always had this mindset when I first started of every minute that you're not working, someone else is, which is so unhealthy. Unhealthy, but it teaches you to work. And I learned really how to just sit there and do the job, even when I don't feel like doing it. You know? But as you go on and as you learn how to do the work, once you've kind of gone to the extreme end of doing it, you learn how to dial it back and you find that balance. But yeah, you need to show up every day, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for the client. You need to show up every day and do the best work that you can. You can't go in and be like, whatever, this project doesn't matter. Every project is important. Every single project is important, because especially from a purely selfish point of view, you don't know where that person's going to end up in 5 years. That person could do nothing with their career. That person could be the next Billie Eilish. You don't know where that person's going to blow up. So from a purely selfish point of view, every single project is important. But from a more ethical point of view, every single person that's coming to you is coming to you because they want to work with you, and you need to respect that. You need to respect that someone's coming to you for your work, and you need to show up every day and give them what they're coming for, which is your best work. They're not coming to you for your worst work. They're coming to you to show up for the best thing that you can do.
I mean, 100%. It's like, I mean, it's a waste of time otherwise.
Absolutely,
it's like it's disrespect. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of your time to be doing something that you're not all in on. And I think that that's, again, really hard when you're first starting, or the first few projects that you take on, because money's important, or you get the FOMO side of things where it's like, oh, if I don't get this, I won't get any other jobs and this and that. Whereas you got to have that, like, am I going to be passionate about this? Am I going to put everything into it because I believe in the artist and the outcome? You know, and without that, again, it's disrespect and it's a waste of time.
Absolutely. And I think the best thing you can do is try and really just put yourself and be like, okay, I'm going to commit. You know, there's the classic, one beat a day for 30 days kind of things. I don't necessarily think that's the best way to create quality work, but to learn how to do work every day and to show up every day is such an important skill.
Yes.
And just to create a lot of music and to create a lot of work is the only way you're going to get better as well.
And that's that classic, it takes 21 days to build a habit and the 10,000 hours thing. Like both of those things are true, is like you can't do something a couple of times and then say it didn't work. It's just that doesn't result in good output. And I see it far too often where people talk about social media, they talk about this, they talk about that, where it's like, oh, it doesn't really work for me. It's like, you haven't yet tried. You're lying to yourself, and that's harsh, but it's true. Like, you're lying to yourself because you haven't done the amount of hours required to put into something to build that habit and to get results.
It's so important to just put in the time. And I think a lot of people, especially at the moment with, I think TikTok and Instagram, the algorithms are crazy because they push the best of the best to you, and you're constantly comparing yourself to these people that are just freaks of nature, whether it's on the piano or producers or whatever. And you look at it and you just go, oh, they must have come out of the womb playing piano like a professional, right? No, absolutely not. I guarantee you they were sitting there practicing 4 hours a day for years on end, And the danger of seeing that is that you go, well, if I'm not going to get it within a week, then I can't do it. It's not true. Absolutely not true. You just got to put in the time and the work.
You have to. And then eventually when it comes to people paying for your stuff, they've got to be able to know that you can follow through. And again, it's like that thing of like, I see this too often where it's like people are taking way too long to get mixes back or something like that. And it's like, and that's because they don't have that discipline that is required. And for me, it's so important to get stuff done and get it done quickly. But the only way that you're going to be able to do that is by having done it so many times where you know the process in and out.
You mentioned before treating music as a business, and I think a lot of people don't really understand what that means. So it's something I'd really love to unpack because people think that treating it as a business means you've got an accountant, you've got a fancy website, and you've got a LinkedIn page or whatever, you wear a suit to work. That's not what being a business is. Being a business means that you're good at what you do and you can deliver on time, you can show up on time, and you're a professional in the sense that you can communicate really clearly. Being a business isn't about having a website or, having lots of numbers or whatever. It's really not about that. It's about showing up on time and doing the job.
Yeah.
That's it.
And being a business and being a career. Yeah. Like having a career.
Long term,
Yeah, because you just, it's like, yeah, cool, you've got a website. That's great. But that doesn't mean that you're getting jobs every day. And like, how do you get jobs every day? You put in the hours of marketing, you put in the hours of reaching out and networking and this and that. And I think what I wanted to unpack before is like, you were talking about like having, oh man, I've lost my train of thought, but I think it's like doing things and refining them, right? It's like you have a process at the start. It's not always going to work that way. You refine it over time. Your checklists change. The way that you go through and send mixes off changes. The way that you do all that sort of stuff. And it is a constant refinement. And you're always going to find ways that work for a period of time and ways that don't. That might be organizing your finances. That might be, like I said, sending off mixes. You might find a new website that works better than Google Drive did 5 weeks ago. And it's this, of course. But then you got to get good at that as well. So it's like this constant updating and refining. Yeah.
It's always finding new ways to do what you do a lot better. And as you said, whether it's in the actual artistic process of making the music or whether it's on the business end of just finding a better way to manage your spreadsheets or whatever, just constantly refining that and updating your workflow. Yeah, super important as well.
So your process of like, I want to know more about like the workflow of, we've talked a little bit about your process of creating music, but then I still want to understand the big picture of like how you do things. Like, what does your day-to-day look like? Are you reaching out to clients every day? What are all those sort of intricacies? Man, I know it's hard because like such a hard question. It's a big picture, but like paint us a bit of a picture.
Yeah, sure. Wake up in the morning, get into the studio, practice piano for an hour and a half. What that looks like for me is doing all my exercises and whatever, going over the standards and stuff, and then finding songs that I like and transcribing them by ear. What do I like about this? How do I play that? Okay, that's really interesting. And more times than not, it will lead to me actually creating a song. Whether I release it again, it might just be like an 8-bar loop that I leave in my drive for 3 years. I don't know. But more times than not, that's what I'll do. From there, I'll then open up my computer and then, look at what I have to do, whether it's, client work or whether it's collaborations that I have to get back to or mixing or whatever. And that's what I'll do for the day. that's pretty much it. So
it's rinse and repeat.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, as I said, days when I'm really not feeling it, I just don't go in because it's a waste of time. Just everything. I just leave the studio's locked for the day. Like I'm not in there, and I just go and do some other stuff, go to a cafe, go for a walk, whatever. I just don't bother. But on the days
I think it's like that thing where like you can equate it to like what I think of straight away is like going to the gym.
Yeah.
There's just going to be days where you just don't feel like going, or you don't feel like going for a run or something like that, and that's okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and I think that can be really difficult because, like you said before, which is that dangerous mindset of if I'm not doing it, it's wasted time.
Yeah.
But it's not. You got to flip that, and you got to understand and listen to yourself and go, what am I feeling right now? And that is another reason why it's important to have a bunch of different things that you're able to focus your energy on. For some, it might be songwriting. For some, it might be, like doing production music or whatever, like learning your piano, anything like that. You've got to have all these different things so that when you rock up and you go, what do I feel like doing? It's all productive and it's not just time wasting. For me, that's like having checklists of all, like, you should see my reminders list. It's there's like all these different like areas so that I can come in and I can be like, what needs doing today? First of all, do I need client work done? Do I have to finish a mix? Blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, cool, I've got no client work. Okay. Stu Watts Audio. What's that sound podcast? No, X, Y, Z, all these different things. And then if none of that speaks out to me, it could just be taking the day off, or it could be reaching out to a friend and being like, just have a chat.
That's it, man. Yeah.
These things that aren't seemingly part of what we do actually feed so much into how good we are at our job.
Dude, it's so important. I've got a friend, Alex Bruce, who's a video game developer. And we always talk about how taking time off or just going and doing things you enjoy, things that feed the soul, is still work. It's still part of your work because you need that to energize you for when you get back in the studio and you're smashing a good session. Otherwise, if you're in the studio 24/7, you're not going to get anything productive done. It's just going to be garbage. And I've lived that. I know what that's like. I think we all have when we're just in a session, nothing's happening, and you go in the next day and nothing's happening. And it's not until you take a week off and then you go, now I'm back. Now I've got the energy.
And those breaks are so fulfilling in the sense of because we love what we do, we're so passionate about it. Anytime we're away from it for a period of time, our brain just goes nuts with stuff.
Dude, it's like all of a sudden, like I'll have a rubbish session. I'll walk out for like 2 hours. Like, I've got all these ideas. Just chill. Just stay out for a day. Just chill. Like, you don't need to be in the studio all the time. Yeah, absolutely. I totally feel that.
And we wake up dreaming about the stupid song that we're working on or something like that. It's our brains just wired to it. But you do have to be able to take those breaks and, do something completely different, whether it's for 5 minutes, whether it's for 5 days. All of those definitely. Little things are so important.
Absolutely.
Yep.
For me, one thing that gives me a lot of inspiration is working with other people and being in other people's spaces, or just going out to I took my laptop onto the park with like my little UAD and recorders. It was a garbage song, but like whatever. it was in a different space. It was on a picnic blanket. It was
nice.
An
exercise, and it might work another time that you do it.
That's it, exactly. But being in other spaces, being with other people, even having other people in my space is super inspiring for me as well.
Yeah. And so talk us through that. Like you're obviously, I've checked out your catalog. There's a lot of tracks that you've been on with other people. Is that organically through you? Is that through the label? Like, and how does that work? How does the communication happen?
Yeah, so good question. For me, I only work with people that I want to work with. If the label wants to set something up, I can try, but I'm not going to force anything. Like if it works, it works. I've got a friend, Elijah, who's also recently moved to Melbourne. He's a great pianist and a great producer, and we're really good friends. We've tried making music online when he lived in New Zealand. We tried making music when we were both at our friend's studio in Prague. We tried making music at my studio, at his studio. It does not work. It doesn't work. We respect each other's work a lot. Yeah. We can't make music together. I don't know why. It just never works. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So for me, it's always about, organic collaboration, 100%. So important. A lot of the collaborations I do just by nature of who I'm connected with in my social circle is online. And that's just a case of, one of us starts a track, sends it to the other person, kind of go a bit back and forth with stems. For example, when Calvin was in my studio a few months ago,
shout out Calvin Bennett.
Yeah, shout out Calvin Bennett, the legend. We made music together in the studio, which again, we'd made music before, but I think that track was just the best track we'd made together because we were together in the studio, and when we're working together, it's great. I have a friend, Ben, who lives in Nice in France, and we've made a lot of music online together, but we always say whenever I visit him, we make the best music together because we're in the studio together and that you can't replicate that energy. So yeah, collaborations work online. They're great, but in person is just the best. You can't beat it. It's really, really good. You go and get lunch together, you go get a drink together, whatever. It's just the best. Yeah.
It is. And you feed the energy that through a computer is not the same as the energy is in person. I mean, I do interviews in person and online and they're both great. I think there's something about being in person, being in that energy, and it is so true with music. I mean, I have not once for a client done an online project. I just haven't done it.
What do you mean? Like
songwriting or anything like that. Like I do mixes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But when it comes to production and helping them beef their songs out, it's like you got to be in the studio for me. I don't think. I mean, it would work. I would make it work, but I don't think it would be the same because you're able to have that instant feedback. Yep. You're able to be like, oh, what are you doing with the guitar there? Like, what chord are you playing? I can see it. I can't see it on a camera. And I think there's just all of those little things. The energy exchange is so different. I think the collaboration side, I've said it so many times on this podcast, is like you just don't get the output of working with someone to come to this commonplace that you can do by yourself. And there's great stuff that I've put out by myself. I love the stuff that I put, but there's something about working with people.
It's so much more fun for me, so much more energizing for me. I was recently in Europe. I organized a meetup in Berlin with 12 people. And I think we had some other guys join in. So it was 16 people in one Airbnb at one point. And we had a little studio set up. Hoffy Beats from Denmark brought down his studio in his car. And man, I was with the guitar and he was playing on piano. We had just had some drum loop going and jamming. And, you got like 10 people around you. And man, you can't. That's just the best feeling ever, And just that, and we went out and rented like 3 studios, and we had like 4 or 5 people in each studio making music together. And dude, that kind of energy is just. Yeah, I don't know what it is, man, but you make really, really good music together, and everyone's vibing, and you go out for lunch with 15 people, and go back to the studio. I can't describe it, man.
It's also I think for anyone that hasn't been in a band before, it's like that's where I came up with playing in bands. Yeah. Like you said, you were playing in bands as well. Yeah. It's like you all of a sudden come to this point where it's like, oh, what are we going to write here? Oh, let's play it again. And then all of a sudden everyone goes to this one chord that I don't know how we all knew what we were going to do there, but we did. And then it's like, that's the best part of the song. Yeah. And we couldn't have done it any other way apart from jamming.
Yeah. It's playing in bands. I miss playing in bands, man. That's, wow, I really miss that.
But also I don't miss playing in bands.
2 hours.
Both sides of the coin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I've got a friend that plays in a band now, and I go and see them sometimes. I'm just living vicariously through them. I don't get to do any of the setup or any of the rest. All the good bits, exactly. I'm like, hey, this is cool.
Yeah, my mates shout out to the boys in between you and me. They're killing it. They're like, I love seeing them do what they do, and love seeing their tour footage and stuff like that, because one of them used to be in a band with me, and it's like it's the same thing. It's like, man, he's killing it, and I love him for it. Like, good on you. I'm glad I don't have to do half of the stuff that you have to do.
Dude, straight up,
yeah. And even like being in the studio, it's like there's just a difference in being a facilitator.
Yep.
And, I don't know what it was like for you, but I was always the one in the band that was being the facilitator and making stuff happen and organizing people and stuff like that. And there's just a difference when you're doing it for, I guess, when everyone's on the same page. Everyone has to be on the same page when you're doing a production for the client. If the band's scattered and, one person gives a shit and the other 3 don't, things like that. So that's a hard thing, but yeah, I don't know. I just went off on a tangent there.
No,
but yeah.
I love it, man. Bands, I'm just reminiscing about being in the bands.
Fun. So talk us through, you're talking about wanting to produce with other artists.
Yeah.
What do you want to do over the next 6 months? What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as I said in the past, I've produced for a few artists as well, and it's been really, really fun. And I think the thing that I've enjoyed the most about that is having an artist come in and just being together, making the music, whether it's from scratch or taking, seeing the reaction on an artist's face when you take the guitar demo from the voice notes and make into a song. Oh, whoa, and this and that, and let's change this. That's so cool. I love that feeling of just bringing someone's idea to life. So I think the next 6 months for me, I'm also moving into a new studio in October, which is really exciting. So much happening at the moment for me, which is great. But the next 6 months for me really looks like just reaching out to more artists. I've been going through Unearthed dude, Unearth has some crazy. I haven't been on it in a while. They have some amazing artists. Man. They have some really, really good things. Really good stuff happening there. So yeah, reaching out to a lot of artists and just saying, I really vibe with your music. If you want to come in for a session, come in for a session. Let's just see what happens. That kind of stuff has been really, really cool. One of my girlfriend's friends, she's a singer, she studies singing, has no interest in being a singer, but her voice is incredible. I said, you got to come into the studio. We're doing something. She's coming in on Sunday and we're doing work together because she's incredible.
Sweet.
So I think just reaching out to artists and getting stuff done. I'm not pushing the business side or clients or any of that. I'm not interested in it. I just want to work with artists and make music and just start seeing what I'm comfortable with. You know, as I said before, what I want to focus on. Do I want to do the whole thing? Do I want to do songwriting all the way to mastering? Or do I just want to focus on a few different aspects of that? What do I want to be doing? And the only way to do that is to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think artists, the good thing that you've already got that, the years of you've been doing what you do. So you can still continue to do. I'm guessing you are going to still continue doing that sort of stuff.
I love what I do. And I think the foundation in what I do is great. I've got a foundation doing, stuff for media as well, which needs to be, crispy mixes and masters and all that. So I've already got the experience doing all that, which means it's just a sidestep. I still need to learn a lot of things, but it's a small sidestep. I'm not going from scratch, and it's
I think that's really important. I think that, whether you have that as a musician before you dive into music, it's really important to have a foundation of something that will allow you to then go into do other stuff where it's like, I know that this isn't going to bring money in the first 2 or 3 years of me doing it, but I'm still allowing myself to get into those spaces, and without doing that, you are losing a lot of opportunity. And I think that's another thing that I've realized recently. And even I've only been doing this podcast for a year and a half now, or something like that, or almost 2 years now. But I think that over the time I'm having these conversations, that realization's become really clear to me that you can do as much client work as you want. You can be the facilitator. You can provide that service to you, which is what I love doing, and I'm going to continue doing it. But by not being in those creative zones with people, being in rooms with people, like you said, just having fun and trying stuff out, you are robbing yourself of some opportunities. And I think that's become really clear to me lately.
Dude, the thing that I learned really early on was just give people something before you expect something in return. And I learned that because I was talking to this guy called Nico, who's a guitarist from the UK, and he shared his friend's post on Twitter, back when I used Twitter. And he said, I'm just starting out making lo-fi, making my first EP. Does anyone want to make a video for him? I said, not doing anything today. I'll make a video for him. Why not? Made a video for him. He didn't end up using it, whatever. We stayed in contact. And about a year later, he blew up. Like, he got to 1 million monthly listeners and it just went completely viral. And then I started making a bit of lo-fi, and I just shared it with him because we were friends. And I said, hey, man, I just made this. What do you think? He's like, yeah, sounds good. I said, do you have any advice on how to kind of get started on this? He said, here's the owner of the label. Just message him. Done. And I was just like, that was instant lesson of just like, man, just give people things. Just do things because you enjoy it. Don't worry about the money or what opportunities, or just don't worry about that shit. Just do things because you enjoy them. Just gravitate towards the things that you love, and the opportunities and the money and the business will come. Just do the things that you love. Just create a cool vibe. Just build a community, whatever you want. Just make it nice to be around.
I think the hardest thing is that it feels so counterintuitive to not focus on money. That is so hard. And especially when you start going, okay, this is my business now. Like, that's a turning point. You go, okay, well, now I have to make money, because if I don't, then the business is failing. So it's so counterintuitive to go, all right, I'm not going to focus on money. But the truth of what you said just then is, like, by giving yourself opportunity, by reaching out to people, by just offering things in advance and just seeing what happens, that is the best way to bring money in, counterintuitively.
Absolutely. Just build opportunities for yourself by giving people things. That's what I'm doing. I'm reaching out to artists saying, come in for a session. Let's make a song. I'll produce it for you. I don't care. It takes me 10 hours. I don't care. Like, it's fun. I love it. That's why I do it. I'm not doing this for money. Obviously I need to eat, but I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because I love it. And eventually the money will come. And I really believe that.
And so we've talked a lot about, like, the way to make things happen and the good things. What are some of the key challenges that you see doing what you do, and how have you over time kind of overcome those sorts of things?
Are you saying moving forward with the artist production stuff, or just
no, just in general, what you do and what you've done in the past?
Key challenges that I faced dealing with rejection is something that I still not used to, but it's really, really hard. I worked on one project that I spent 70 hours on in 1 week because it was the first time I got a brand opportunity. It was for Kia or something. And it was from this company based in Tokyo, and they said, hey, we want you to make the music for it. And I spent 70 hours making 2 tracks for them. And they said, yeah, thanks. Never got back to me.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. I was like, man, I suck at music. I can't do this. Months later, I sent my music to a label that I really wanted to work with, rejected the whole album. Great. Wasn't getting any more work at that. It was a brutal time. And I think the way I overcame that was just taking a break and just going, clearly something you're doing isn't working. And that was hard, man. That was hard because at that point I'd spent 2 years full-time working on music, and I just went, like, am I just not good? Like, do I just suck? Like, what's going on here? How can I spend 2 years on something and still? So I took a break for 6 months, and obviously eventually it worked out because I came back to it, and I love it. I'm not going to stop. But yeah, it was brutal, man. Just dealing with rejection is one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with in my career. You spent months crafting a project, or a week or 2 weeks crafting a song that you're really passionate about, and you put all the ideas you love in, and someone just turns around and goes, nah.
Do you get to reuse those tracks that you like? They're not like out of bounds now.
No, not at all. I could if I wanted to. I mean, this was 3
You've probably got
4
this negative attachment to them.
Well, that's it as well. You got the negative attachment. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I recycle them. But at the end of the day, I made it for a specific project, and if that project didn't work out, it didn't work out. That's kind of it. And because of that, that's actually a good lesson I've learned, not to get too attached to things. When I make a piece of music, it's cool, it's fine, it's great. If it works, it doesn't work, especially with collaborations and with artists. I was in Berlin with another producer friend of mine, and this was just a train wreck of a session. But anyway, we were with a singer and him, and we were making music, and I had this idea that I was thinking about for a week. I was like, I'm going to detune the guitar like this and play it like this. And I played it to him, and he said, oh, this is beautiful. Okay, we'll work on it with her when she comes in. We worked on it with her, and she was like, no. I'm like, okay, great, next.
Yep.
And just to be able to do that, to be able to go, I have an idea, I love this idea. Oh, it's not working. Next, just move on.
It's not right for that person. Yeah,
that's it. But that skill of moving on and not getting attached to ideas, that's the most valuable thing. And yeah, the silver lining to being brutally rejected by the industry during that time was that you learn to just move on from ideas quickly.
Building that resilience.
Yeah,
and
man,
I think like to me, I can resonate with that fact with like mixing, because mixing, you input so much of your personality into it. And I think we're all inspired by certain producers and mixers and certain artists and stuff, and we want our things to sound a certain way. But it was Josh Beatty who was on the podcast. He made such a good point of like, you're not supposed to sound like those people because you are you. And I carry that with me all the time, and it's such a good thing to have. And I think your thing doesn't work for everyone, and it's not supposed to. That's a really good way to build that up and to be able to say, cool, let's move on. That's great. Oh, you didn't like the mix? What didn't you like about it? I want to make you happy because it's your track. Those sorts of mindsets are so important.
It's the most important thing, man. Just letting go of the ego and just making music. Especially if it's for an artist, man, you're making it for the artist. You're not making it for yourself. Like, they're here to make, you're there to make a song for them. And just going, okay, what do you want to do? It's not about me.
Yep.
It's the most important thing with collaborations as well. Just being really honest with people and just going, I don't like this idea. You don't like this idea, whatever. Let's move on. Let's work on this. Yeah. Honesty and communication, man.
Unreal.
Yeah. It's good.
Well, I mean, we've covered so many topics. I want to know the way I finish up these podcasts is your best bits of advice for the people that are in their first 5 years. First of all,
5 years.
First of all, or if you could go back and tell yourself something, that's a similar way to frame it. But first of all, for producers and engineers, and secondly, for artists that might be listening.
For producers and engineers, I would say the best thing you can do is get a mentor that knows their shit. That was instrumental for me, man. And I had that my first experience 2 years ago when I went overseas, and I worked with a bunch of people that were a lot better than me, and I went, whoa, okay. And I just came back and worked on an album, and people just turned around and said, dude, you've just like incredible. Like, how did you do it? Working with other people? Get mentored by people who know their shit, really know their stuff. Even if you're paying for it, it doesn't matter. Dude, just sit with other people. Get yourself into studio sessions, learn from other people. YouTube tutorials are fine, but learn from other people in person. That's the best thing you can do as a producer.
Yep.
As an artist, this is a hard one. Every artist is going to be different. Every artist has a different journey. There's no one journey that you're going to have, and that's kind of something I struggle with. I always compared myself. Well, they had this many streams in 2016, and then they had this many streams in 2020. So that means that within 4, it's like, nah, that's not how it works, man. That's not how it works. It's you're not going to have the same. Oh well, they got signed at this age, and it's not how it works. You're going to have a completely different journey.
Yeah.
As an artist, it's so important to just make stuff that you like. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Just make stuff that you really resonate with, and eventually you'll find a way to make that commercially viable if that's what you want. You'll find a way to kind of find the blend of that. I used to make weird post rock and weird prog rock and all of that stuff, and that's still in my music.
Yeah,
that's still in my music, but I found a way to make it more commercially viable and just kind of find the balance between the two. And that's a really important thing. Yeah. Don't worry about making things commercially viable as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Make stuff that you like and commercially viable. There's an intersection there.
There is.
Make that stuff. Find where that is. That's the advice. Find the intersection between stuff you like, stuff that's commercially viable. That's the intersection.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man, for joining me. This has been awesome. And I guess, do you have anything that you want to shout out that's coming up in the near future? This episode should come out in a couple of weeks. So anything or anyone that you've been working with recently that...
Nothing new. I'm in a transitionary period at the moment. Cool. So yeah, keep an eye out on my stuff, and we'll see where I'm at in a year.
Absolutely. Well, all the links will be in the show notes as always if you want to check it out. So yeah, thank you again, and thanks to you're very welcome. Thanks to all of you for checking this out. If you could do us a favor, share the podcast on your socials in a conversation. That helps us out. Spread the word. If you could do us a favor and hit follow or subscribe, that way you can stay up to date with everything new. Email me if you have any suggestions. I'm always open for suggestions and guests that we could talk to, such as Nadav here. So thank you, and we will see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.